Hello guys, welcome back to Shraga Debunks. This is episode 8. Today I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different than usual. I'm going to be talking about an organisation that perpetuates antisemitism even more than BDS, more than anyone else, and incredibly efficiently. That's right, today I'm going to be talking about the UN. First, let me throw some facts at you. As of 2013, the UN has condemned Israel in its Human Rights Council 45 times. That's more than the rest of the entire world combined. The Human Rights Council has a permanent agenda of 10 items, number 7 of which is Israel. Not a single other state appears on the agenda, permanently. Okay? Makes you think. Makes you think of this. Either one of two things is true. Either Israel is literally the worst country in the world, or the UN has a flaw. Either something is wrong with the UN, or Israel is literally the worst country in the world. So let's get to examining both of those possibilities, shall we? Let's go. So let's take a look. Israel is a democracy. We have equal rights for every citizen. That's men, women, Arab, children. Everyone has equal rights. We have a pride parade in Tel Aviv, for example. We have no concentration camps, which is something that some people could talk about, maybe some other countries. We have... Israel is not the worst country in the world. I mean, let's be honest here. We have free travel within it. We have free travel outside of it if you have a passport. We've got equal rights. Israel is not the worst country in the world. I'll grant you, we're not the best country in the world either. Okay? It's not like we're the perfect utopia of every country that they should aspire to be us. But we're not the worst country in the world. Right? Even the most ridiculous critic, like the most outlandish guy that hates Israel, right? No logical person could say Israel is the worst country in the world. So, option 1 doesn't make sense. Israel is not the worst country in the world. So, something must be wrong with the UN. But, you know what, let's not say it's a foregone conclusion. Let's take a look. Okay, maybe I missed an option. So let's take a look at the UN. The UN was founded by Western, pro-rights, pro-freedom countries that existed in the beginning. Right? It's founded by Great Britain, the US, France, the Allies after World War II. Since then, though, they wanted to add people like Soviet Russia and other countries, and those other countries aren't Western pro-freedom countries. They wanted to join together and, deal with the West. The West was kind of problematic for them because the West was doing better than they are. Soviet Russia, for example. So, these communist countries were looking for allies in order to take down the West in the UN. So what did they do? They added Arab countries who had a common enemy. They also don't like the US, and Israel, and the West. So, the communist Arab voting bloc included a bunch of countries that just don't like the Western world. And those are the people in charge of the UN, right? Many of these countries in the UN don't have, even basic human rights. We've got Syria, Egypt, Iran. There's all these countries in the UN that aren't actually, big supporters of human rights, but they're on the UN and they are condemning other countries, including Israel, mainly. Just like I said in the beginning, Israel has been condemned more times than any other country on the planet. All of this, nice theory, but can I prove it? Of course I can. Take a look, for example, at who the UN a couple of days ago added to the Women's Rights Committee. I'll tell you who they are. I'll give you a clue first though. Okay, they're a world leader in women's issues. They are the 5th worst country in the world to be a woman in. And they are number one, I'm telling you, in domestic abuse of women. Okay? Guess who's on the Women's Rights Commission in the UN? That's right, the one and only Iran. Iran has been added to the Women's Rights Commission, people. Okay? Iran. This reads like a satire. I thought this was from the Babylon Bee. I didn't think this was an actual headline that happened. But it did. Iran is on the Women's Rights Commission in the UN. Okay? If you need any evidence for the fact that the UN is a joke, that's it. That's it. Iran on the Women's Rights Committee. Whatever. Need any more though? China! Human rights. China. With the concentration camps and everything? China on the Human Rights Committee. They are denying all of their citizens even basic human rights. They have barely got property rights. The right to privacy, not a thing there. Okay? The right to freedom of expression, no. They have concentration camps with the Uyghur Muslims. They are not an oasis of human rights in the West, or in the East, or anywhere. Okay? China is on the Human Rights Commission. And if that doesn't show enough, Pakistan is also on the Human Rights Commission. Pakistan, yeah, those guys, they hang gay people. No religious tolerance, nothing. On the Human Rights Commission. If you needed any evidence that the UN is rubbish, there you go. The UN is full of it. Okay, the UN has so many members that are not even supplying their people with basic human rights. No, I take it back. Human rights are not supplied, they can only be taken away. Human rights are inherent to humanity. Human rights belong to every human, and they don't happen in most of the countries in the UN because the countries are taking them away. Okay, the UN is so full of it. The UN is not objective or in any way a good way to measure anyone's worth. Israel gets condemned? Yeah, Israel gets condemned, but that's not a bad thing. It's just because that's what happens when you put a bunch of people that hate Israel in a room together, Israel gets condemned. Of course, if you need any more evidence, the UN has officially recognized Hebron as part of the state of Palestine, which, as I explained in literally episode 1, does not exist by definition. It was in the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization referred to Hebron as part of the state of Palestine in 2017. In the Durban Review Conference on Racism, conducted by the UN of course, the keynote speaker, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, said Zionism is not only racist, but the root of racism. Right? The root of racism is what Zionism is. So until Zionism came around, there was no such thing as racism. Zionism is the root of racism, according to the keynote speaker at the UN, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Okay, and I don't need to tell you who Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is. Not the greatest guy, to say the least. It's not only the keynote speaker, it's also the UN as a whole that thinks very similar things. For example, UN Resolution 3379 states Zionism is a form of racism. Zionism, a form of racism. The belief that Jews get the same rights as every other people on the planet. The belief that we have the right to be in our home, to self-determine ourselves. That right there, that's racism according to the UN. So tell me right now, is Israel the problem or is the UN the problem? Israel is not perfect. We're not even close. We're not perfect, but I'll tell you what, we're damn well better than most of the people in the area. Okay, we have Saudi Arabia with women's rights. Yeah, not really. Or anyone's rights, really. There's Jordan, there's Egypt, there's Syria, there's Lebanon, there's Iran in the area. Right, just so we're clear, we are not the worst people on the planet, and the UN is incredibly biased against Israel right now. And has been ever since 1975. There is someone I'd like to call to the floor. Herzog, take it away.
It is indeed befitting, Mr. President, that the United Nations, which began its life as an anti-Nazi alliance, should 30 years later find itself on its way to becoming the world center of anti-Semitism. Hitler would have felt at home on a number of occasions during the past year, listening to the proceedings in this forum, and above all to the proceedings during the debate on Zionism. Mr. President, it is a sobering reflection indeed to consider to what this body has been dragged down if we are obliged today to contemplate an attack on Zionism. For this attack constitutes not only an anti-Semitic attack of the foulest type, but also attack in this world body on Judaism, one of the oldest established religions in the world.
Well said, Mr. Herzog. Well, that's it. I hope I've effectively debunked the whole organization of the UN as absolutely biased and rubbish in every way. And that's it. If you have any ideas, you can comment them down below. If you have any comments, of course, let me know. Like, share, subscribe, send the video to everyone you know. Please promote this truth and make sure people don't hate Israel for no reason. And as always, I'm Israel Chai.